Welcome to our August 1st dive at Shaw's Cove in Laguna Beach. Shaw's Cove is a rocky point sticking out between two coves. It has lots of channels, small grottos, and some swim-through arches. On a calm day, like on this afternoon, divers can swim through these narrow channels before reaching the outer reef. We swam out from the beach to this location, then descended 20 feet to the sandy bottom. We then swam under the first and largest arch. Just past that is a small grotto open to the surface above. From the grotto, we ducked under a shelf to enter a long, narrow cut. Then, we hang a right into a larger channel. Then we swim out and around the farthest point of reefs. We follow the reef edge back toward shore, where there is one final tunnel before ascent, arriving where we first entered the water. Let's start the actual dive now. Here, Brian and I are dropping to the sand before heading toward the entrance to the arch. We have to swim into the reef a bit to reach the arch, but that's okay. Everywhere you go on a reef dive, there's always something to see. On our way there, we happened upon a trio of barred surf perch. These fish are native to the inshore waters all the way from Northern California to Baja, Mexico. The diet of surf perch consists predominantly of sand crabs. In fact, you'll see a different fish who just caught a sand crab later in the video. These barred surf perch seem a bit skittish as they swim away from us, but eventually one became curious and stopped, posing for my camera, perhaps curious about the bright video light. We primarily use video lights because water filters out the longer wavelength colors sooner. This means the color red is gone at just 10 feet, followed soon by orange and then yellow. At deeper sport diving depths, you can only see blues and greens. If you supply light, you can restore these colors. However, your light travels from the video light to the object, bounces off, and returns through water to your lens. This means if you get more than 5 feet from your subject, the light travels 10 feet and you start to lose red again. You'll see this in action as we turn the dive lights on and off, and are different distances from our subject. While passing through the arch, we noticed a vertical crack in the reef. Brian aims his camera and light inside and is rewarded by finding a whole pass of lobsters hiding in the crack. Having swam through the arch, we enter the grotto, which is filled with life. Water is flushed through here regularly by surge caused by waves channeling the water to higher speeds as it makes it through the narrow cracks in the reef. This brings food to the plant and animal life that lives in this grotto. Down at the bottom, I run into a junior Garibaldi who still has the iridescent blue dots that will go away once he becomes an adult. He seems curious about my camera and poses for me quite well. However, it's time to move on and see more of the grotto ahead. Brian looks up as a wave crests over the top of the exposed reef above us. On a calm day, this is pretty, but on a rougher day, it can cause tiny bubbles to come down into the grotto, creating a whiteout, where you can't see anything. Looking back down, I spotted another crack in the reef, which is where lobsters love to hang out in the daytime. They come out at night to forage for food. Lobsters grow by making a new soft shell inside the existing hard shell. Then they molt, getting rid of the old exterior. Their new soft shell grows and hardens, and they get larger. You can find these molts occasionally drifting along. Here we are at the low arch that leads to a narrow crevice heading out toward the outer reef. This is a perfect example of fish feeding where the water washes things in from the deep. Here, I swam under the arch and spotted this good-sized calico bass waiting for his next snack. He's in here with sargo, barred surf perch, Garibaldi, and sheephead. Brian entered the low arch and spotted something rare. In 1985, these were considered extinct, but it turns out some must have still existed because they have recently shown up in Laguna Beach. This is a nudibranch, which means naked lungs. They come in lots of varieties. This one is about 3 inches long and is called a blue dorid. It's nice to see you, and I'm glad that the reports of your extinction were exaggerated. Heading out through the narrow crevice, it hardly looks like you can fit, but there is actually just enough room. Brian is ahead of me, shooting back toward me as I shoot video of him as well. Toward the end of this crevice, there is another shelf, so Brian stops to take a look, and sure enough, another mass of lobsters. Brian finds another lobster molt, so he decides to see what this male Garibaldi will do to protect his nest. He immediately starts picking at the interloping molt. attempting to drag it away from the nest on the reef wall. Don't worry, we made sure his nest was safe. Now finally out of the long crevice, we head toward a canyon, making a right turn before we head out to deeper water. Out here, the kelp stalks rise all the way up to the surface, some 35 feet above us. As you can see, this canyon is much wider than the previous crevice. Though the summer heated surface water is nearly 80 degrees, out here a cold current rolls in and the temperature drops to 63 degrees. Some curious sheepheads start following Brian, so he stops, and even more of their pals show up, thinking there's a free meal to be had. Pretty soon, an entire shoal of sheephead crash the party, but they go away disappointed since we don't actually have any food to hand out this time. One latecomer shows up, and I follow him to the nearby kelp, trying to get a nice shot. Brian videos him from the other side, catching me in the shot as well. We start kicking for shore, since our air is down to the last third. We've been down now for nearly an hour. We spot a rockfish that has a large sand crab in his mouth. Yummy. He's not about to give up his dinner, even when a pesky diver with a video camera shows up. The reef along the way to the shore has plenty of pretty things to see. Here are massive gorgonians. We take one last crevice on the way back, something Shaw's Cove is known for. In this calm sea state, it's wonderful swimming through these narrow spots in the reef. These are rocky reefs, not coral, but the rocks are completely covered with plant and animal life, like the lobster to my left, or all the tiny forms of life, from tube worms to sponges, small anemones to shrimp. There are a whole host of small mollusks, plants, and invertebrates. Almost everything is coated with some form of life. Here we are at the end of this crevice, headed into a grotto. We'll make a turn and head for the edge of the reef system. Brian is using his light to search along the reef for interesting critters. Here's a school of young sargo and some nice yellow sponges behind them. As these sargo get older and larger, they will likely move out to live in the kelp forest toward the outer reefs. We are headed toward shore now, hugging the edge of the reef as we get to shallower water. I'm using this opportunity to grab a few last-minute shots of Brian. It is afternoon, so the sun is starting to get lower in the sky, making a hazy, lazy end to the dive. We've been down over an hour now, but in the shallow water, the last usable air in our tanks will last quite a long time. As we get shallower, I find some young fish hiding in the eelgrass, but they're a bit too shy to video. Kicking along gently, we keep following the contours of the reef toward the sandy beach ahead. Eventually, we leave the reefs and head across the sand. We'll pop up right at the edge of the surf line, though there isn't much surf to deal with on this calm day in Shaw's Cove. However, in the sandy shallows, I run into one more critter, a small ray. As I get close, he decides I'm way too big and ugly, so he heads off by rippling the sides of his flat body. Now in only 5 feet of water, we can bask in the enjoyment of the weightlessness of the underwater world. It's been a great dive, very relaxing with lots of things to see. I can't wait for the next dive in this amazing wonderland of reefs at Shaw's Cove. Don't forget to hit the like and subscribe buttons below so you won't miss any of the upcoming videos and the start of the Sea Lynx adventure.